So yeah, thank you to Gareth for the introduction. My name's Paul Reading. I am Strategic Specification Director at ACS. So thanks to everyone for being here, so many of you here. Today I'm going to talk briefly around the issues that we see in industry around cavity congestion before moving on to look at kind of how our products should address a majority of these. After my section, there's going to be a short Q&A, so please send them in on your lanyard, on the QR code, send them in to us. So we saw a couple of images in that short video just then around cavity congestion. The image on the left shows quite a large masonry support bracket with fire barriers essentially having to be cut either side of the bracket and then material stuffed in there. Now, obviously that's a site measure to have to do. If you miss any of that and fire comes through, essentially you're creating a chimney potentially where flames can pass straight through there, essentially making the fire barrier redundant. Because it's fully penetrating through, you haven't really got an option for there. The right image shows kind of a typical scenario that we see day in, day out on construction products with a very cluttered cavity. As we said in there, majority of people, when we put surveys out, have put it as the number one issue is around cavity congestion within a brick facade. So the image on the right shows projecting masonry supports, picking it up at window head. You're then going to have to fit on top of this non-combustible cavity trays and your fire barrier. The only way you're going to be able to do that is by modifying products on site, potentially won't actually work together. The other thing is that potentially you're getting these from different contractors. The issue with that is everybody's vying for the same space. They're potentially not designing around the products that need to be there. So what are we doing for that? So the solution that we've got for this is the Intex product. So it's my pleasure to bring you the details on this. So the Intex product seeks to kind of get rid of the issues we're seeing around cavity congestion in and around the floor slab junction. So the four key parts of this product are masonry support, cavity tray, wall ties, and also fire protection integrated in there. And it's designed to serve all the key critical functions around this floor slab area. To show how this works, there's a short video that will kind of show the details around the product. So the product is very similar to our current masonry support system. We still utilise the alpha adjustment system, giving you plus or minus 25 millimetres of vertical tolerance when you're actually fixing into a slab. So it's designed around building tolerances. The product itself, as Gareth said previously, is made from very high amount of recycled material, over 90%. We've integrated ergonomic handles actually within to the bracket design. Sometimes it can be a bit tricky to fit when you've got large brackets. So we've thought of the contractor who's going to be fitting this on site. Now the product itself has a integrated cavity tray with a patented clip system to actually get the cavity tray and the fire barrier onto your masonry support bracket. It's an easy process that requires one bracket to have a special feature and the other ones can just sit in there. It's a very easy process to actually get to work on site. We also have a clipping tie, and I'll go through this in a little bit more detail later in the presentation as to kind of why we've put this in and the issues you commonly saw previously around this and how this can benefit you. Just let this run through. The final thing is to do with the actual coding within there. We know that sometimes it can be a nightmare to fit different products within there, so we made sure it's as clear as possible where our product goes on that building, and we keep it clear that the parts go together. The same references you have on your angle will be the same as the other components you put in there with your cavity tray. So running this in a little bit more detail and breaking it up, kind of the key features around it. We've seen from our test sites that the product can dramatically assist with the build speeds on your projects, with over potentially 40% increases in speed on a typical project. We've also seen that because we're trying to fit the products into one assembly, you are severely reducing the cavity congestion for up to potentially 60% on a typical project. The tray itself is supplied with an integrated fire barrier in there. It means that it can't be missed. It's actually part of the system rather than being a separate piece. It's part of your installation method of the whole product. So it reduces the fact that you could potentially, with a normal product, miss putting that in there. As I said before, we also have a slot detail for the wall tie within the bracket detail, saving you time on site when actually installing these products. So the bracket design, we've listened to the customer feedback about the installation of masonry supports and made sure on this product we have a very easy to access area at the top of it. Profile bracket design that we've used on our kind of standard masonry support system, we've kept on there. And as I said before, our alpha system's still within there, so you've got plus or minus 25mm of vertical tolerance. You could still use this with shim details, so we'll allow up to 12mm. The standard that we normally use for masonry support has carried on into this product. So there's not a massive change from what you're used to. The other point, as I briefly mentioned before, is the actual holes in the side. So you can physically put your hands in there now when you're carrying the product around, and it assists the site teams to actually install that product in there. Feedback we've had on that from the test sites has been very positive, and has actually helped to speed up the installation of the product. The actual cavity tray detail then is attached with a fail-safe design. It's a patented design method for the actual installation and the hook design. So it involves a hook detail that is a kind of a fix and forget sort of special feature into there, making sure that it is correctly installed every time. The tray pieces are actually specifically designed to work around the support, so you will have the right piece for the right piece of tray for the right piece of support every time, and make sure you've got a fully coherent product for your building. In a bit more detail, the detail around the actual clips in there means that if you've got any pressure onto the cavity tray during construction, it can't physically come back out. Once it's in there, it's not coming out. You have to lift it fully back out to get the product out. And that's only on one bracket on each piece of support. Once you've got that, your other brackets can have a simpler method. Just needs to sit there. It's got a very easy QA process on that. You can physically see that that bracket is installed into the tray correctly. So the other ones, as I say, can physically sit within the same detail, but can just sit in place to make sure that the product is actually in there. The cutouts within the tray give you enough horizontal tolerance to allow for the typical building tolerance we see on modern construction. The pieces of tray, essentially we've carried on the principles from our cavity tray design from the BBA certified G tray and A tray products. So we require a minimum overlap of at least 50mm to keep with the same design principles of our other products. So from a moisture perspective, obviously with masonry support, you do tend to have a 10mm gap between pieces just to allow you for the typical construction tolerances that you're going to see. So to bridge this gap, we've used the same detail as our cavity tray. We have a jointing piece to actually bridge this gap. Now this is attached in the same way as our cavity tray with a double butyl tape joint to make sure you've got a fully sealed system all the way around your building. The masonry support angle has been modified to replicate the cavity tray design, including a 100mm upstand to make sure that any mortar drops that fall in there, water can still pass out your cavity out of the weep vents as designed, and you've got no risk of water coming back over the top of the angle. The next key feature is actually around the integrated wall tie connection. Previous to this, you potentially have to drill back between your brackets into your concrete structure and attach a frame cramp on there. Now obviously the time to install that can be quite dramatic. So with this, all you simply need to do is clip a tie in. Now the system and the tie design allows for tolerance within that. So we've allowed for both a pistol design and a standard brick for your bottom brick, and does allow for that different size of the mortar joint to make sure you'll always get that product in place. Now moving on to kind of probably the most ingenious part of the product is around the fire barrier. So Intex includes an integrated fire barrier within the system that's designed to work in and around the components within that assembly. Now Intex has undertaken fire tests at Warrington Fire and has achieved test values of over 120 minutes from an integrity perspective and over 90 minutes from an insulation perspective. Now sometimes this happens on products at just a certain cavity. Now we've tested this product up to 350mm cavity, so pretty much covering the most challenging of circumstances you may see on a building. It also takes into account the recent changes to the building standards around thermal perspective. We're probably going to start seeing larger and larger cavities, so we're making sure that we're designing that into the system. The product itself is mechanically fixed onto the system. We won't be gluing it in or taping it onto the system. It is a full mechanical fix onto there to ensure that it's a fail-safe design and that it will stand the test of time. The difference between this and what you're probably used to in a masonry construction is the product is more similar to an open state design. Now, as it is different, there's a reason we're doing this. There's a number of reasons we're doing this. The first one is around actually the installation of a closed state barrier. Because of your mortar joints within there, because they are essentially green mortar, they can move, you have to wait to install your fire barrier actually in place. With this, you can just fit it straight in. There's no risk of it pushing your brickwork out and making the product not work as it should actually function as. This increases the actual installation speed, and as I said previously, the 40% increase in speed that you can see is dramatic. Now, this doesn't take into account in our calculations the additional days you're potentially going to need waiting on site for your mortar to actually set and have the strength required to be able to put an open state barrier on it. The other benefit with this design is around the actual installation of product. With closed state barriers, you require a minimum compression. It's very difficult to do this with the tolerances that you actually have on a modern site. So we've made sure to actually allow for the tolerances in this system. Now, to allow for this, obviously we've done our normal tests to get the ratings, the fire tests on that. We've also completed additional testing at quite a significant cost at tolerances over what we'd expect to see on a building, just to make sure that that product will still work in there. See, as Gareth said, we're all about safety, so we want to make sure that in every circumstance, this product will still work. On top of this, we do actually have another product you can order from now that doesn't have the fire barrier actually in place. So we have a 3-in-1 system that is the masonry support, cavity tray and wall tie that can be used with your normal fire barriers if it's easier to kind of get onto your buildings now. And this really is available from now.